representative for Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool. This was originally done as a panel discussion with Melissa Sullinger from the City of Waco. And this is a re-recording because there was a technical issue related to that and we had to re-record it, and Melissa couldn't be with us today, but we will be touching upon some of the points that she made with the City of Waco. So we just wanted to go and look at why new employee orientation is important. We wanted to ask a question. And in order to do that, we wanted to get to the next slide. And we wanted to ask yourselves, how much time does your employer spend formally training new employees about expectations and safe work practices? And get that slide for you here. So think about that. Think about that question, and we'll come back to it in a little bit. Now, Brandon, you have a story about how important new employee orientation is. Could you tell our audience about that?
Yes, I'd like to share this story, but before I go too far into that, I would like to make clear that I was able to get permission from this member to share this story. This is a story about a 19-year-old young man that started working with the city, had been working for about a year. He had recently transferred into the Public Works Department. And on the day that he was injured, the job task was to break up some concrete, and they were using a jackhammer to break the concrete up. The jackhammer bit got stuck inside the concrete. So they took a sledgehammer and started beating on the bit of the jackhammer to try to break it free. Well, whenever they did, a piece of metal broke off and struck the young man in the eye. Now, this started a 14-month roller coaster ride for this young man. Initially, he was told that he was going to lose his eyesight. Then he was told several times throughout that 14-month process that he would regain eyesight. And in fact, he did begin to see shades of gray and gain some vision, only to lose it later again. He had multiple restrictions to try to preserve his eyesight throughout this period. He had to lay in an inclined position. In other words, he had to sleep sitting up. He could not bend over too far. He could not lift anything. He could not fly. He had to stay away from elevation to, reduce the likelihood of pressure on the eye. He was never able to return to work during that 14-month period. Currently, he has to wear protective eyewear for the rest of his life to protect his one good eye. He never did regain his vision. Now, this particular injury cost this member about $114,000 in medical bills, about $41,000 of which are lost time wages. But that's not the real cost to this injury. The real cost of this injury is this young man's sight and how it affected him for the rest of his life. Now, whenever one of these types of incidents occur, one of the things that we want to try to do is try to understand how it happened and how we can keep it from happening again, because we certainly don't want anybody to have to go through the same kind of trials and tribulations that this young man had to go through. The first thing that we think of is that a simple $3 pair of safety glasses may have prevented this particular injury. And if you start to peel the layers back of this particular incident, you think that possibly a safety culture could have prevented this. If that crew that he had been working with, that had more experience, had encouraged him to wear eyeglasses, maybe that would have prevented it as well. But if we go back even further, and a safety culture for the member as a whole begins at the very beginning of an employee's career. We want to set that tone right up front whenever they come on board. And that's why a new employee orientation process is a very important aspect of any onboarding process.
So safety orientation, our new employee orientation, is an important part of the whole culture, not just for the new employees, but then the existing employees either, because sometimes we have to watch each other's back when we're out there conducting operations.
That is exactly right. We want to, again, set that culture early in their career. This is how we work. at this particular organization. This is what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and this is why we want you to work this way. It's not so much bringing the hammer to the employee. It's, hey, we care about you, we care about our organization, we care about the responsibility that we have to protect the taxpayers' dollars, and we want to bring all that together so that you stay safe on the job.
That's right. And another important way that we discussed, Brandon, to establish culture is through an accident prevention program. And these are the 7 components of an accident prevention plan. The first one is a management statement of safety. Now, you had an example about management statement of safety and how that's implemented in the employer's culture.
Yes, a management statement of safety is just like it says. You want to get management support immediately and up front. Without management support, it's very difficult to get an active safety program that is effective. It has to start at the top.
And there's some entities that will actually make sure that their city manager or city administrator is available during the new employee orientation to provide that statement, and they'll reschedule all the other work to make sure that it's available for those new employees, because it's not, then it becomes beyond a written statement.
Yes.
It's in person.
It's an active process. They are actively participating in that process. Whenever an employee says, hey, here is the top person in this organization coming in and spending time with me, that has a positive effect on that employee's understanding of what the culture is for that organization.
Now, we realize that not all entities can implement 7 components of an accident prevention plan, but review these components and see what other ones that are available to you. So talk to us about some of these other ones, Brandon.
Well, depending on the size and the scope of operations for any particular one of our members, the 7-component accident prevention plan, some of those components may apply, some of them may not. And it's just a basic framework of what an active safety program should be. What we encourage our members to do is to review a sample template that we have available to our membership, and those can be obtained through your loss prevention rep, and we'll refer to those folks a little bit later in the presentation. But again, the first component being the management statement of safety, the next being accident incident investigation. We have to spend some time looking at incidents to try to evaluate what happened. We never want to place blame. We don't want to look for fault. That is the wrong approach whenever we look at incident investigation. What we want to try to do is to document the facts so that we can go back later and analyze what happened and actually implement some processes that will prevent that same sort of incident happening in the future. Safety education and training, that is a very important aspect of any program. And honestly, if you are only going to implement 1 or 2 aspects of the 7-component plan, one would be the management statement of safety. It doesn't have to be something written, but they do need to at least be actively involved in the process. The second most important aspect of the 7-point plan is the safety education and training, because that's where you're going to spend some time with your folks, letting them know how work is safely done in that organization.
And new employee orientation is the first safety education and training that an employee is going to get.
That is exactly right. That is the initial impression that's going to be made upon them. So that's why we are spending some time with you today discussing new employee orientation.
Now, Brandon, talk to us a little bit about from an entity level perspective versus a department level perspective and how that works in a new employee orientation.
Well, from an entity standpoint, there are things that you'll want to go over, and we'll go a little bit more in depth with this a little bit later. But say, for example, from an entity level, we want to let everybody know what is acceptable behavior as far as discrimination, harassment, those kinds of things. Then we may want to get a little bit more specific. We have a safety manual for this organization. Here is a copy of it. You need to sign off on it. That would be one example. But as the employees get into their departments, it's very important for the departments to spend time with them, to let them know exactly what is expected of them, how to work with each piece of equipment. And I'll tell you that probably who does a better job than anybody as far as across the board, our membership, police and fire. When police and fire employees come on the job, they may come on the job with previous academy training. And whenever a firefighter learns how to remove a ladder from a truck, they are learning the safe way to get the job done. They're not so much preached that, hey, this is the safe way. Safety is incorporated into how the work is done. So they're working safely and they don't even know it. When an officer goes out to the range and they learn how to clear their weapon, they're learning the safe way to use weapons on the range. A really good example is the City of Waco. Waco has a very extensive process whenever an employee comes on board. The first thing that they do is they have a citywide new employee orientation for all new employees, and it starts with the city manager coming in and spending time with those folks to let them know exactly how the organization operates and what will be expected of them as they are an employee. They spend about 30 minutes, risk management department gets to spend about 30 minutes with those employees discussing safety and risk management and all of those kinds of things. Then, say for example, the solid waste department for the City of Waco, they will go to their department and whatever their assigned vehicle is that they'll be operating, they'll get 80 hours of training. They actually get 2 full weeks. The first full week is with a kind of like a field training officer. Then after that, the second 40 hours, the second week, they're going to go out and be observed by a supervisor or that field training officer. And if they are ready to go, they demonstrate proficiency with the vehicle that they're operating, then they'll turn them loose on their own. If they feel like they need additional training, they'll continue to train them before they get turned loose. So at a minimum, they're going to have 80 hours of training before they actually get out there on the street. Then, in addition to that, the City of Waco has what's called the Safety Certification Program. And they're going to bring all employees back in very early in their career, and they're going to give them 4 hours of training specifically discussing safety and risk management and how the city operates as far as those 2 topics go. Supervisors get an additional 4 hours of training. So 4 hours for office and clerical and frontline employees, an additional 4 hours for supervisors. Then they have a CE process. Every year, each employee has to go through a CE. They have to get continuing education. They have trained every single employee in the City of Waco in that process. So that is a very large program. What applies to them may not apply to all of our members. If you're not doing anything, you want to start with something, and that's what we hope to demonstrate and encourage you to do today.
Well, and something else interesting that I learned with the City of Waco example is they have all new employees. They have designated days that the new employees start so that they can work with the schedules to have the appropriate people there to be able to give these messages out.
Yes, they do.
It's not just continual. Well, you start on the 12th and somebody else starts on the 15th and somebody else starts on another day. They have designated days within the month that new employees start so they can have this formalized program.
Yes, they'll do the new employee orientation twice a month.
Now, on to the issue of selecting topics. We've talked about some of them, but really we wanted to get into, helping people think about how they might select topics for their new employee orientation. What are your thoughts on how members should be thinking about selecting topics?
Well, again, kind of going back to use our example of entity versus department, what works for one member may not necessarily work for the next member. So there really is a thought process that needs to go into how to choose what topics to train on. We could spend a lot of time really getting into the weeds of what needs to be discussed in new employee orientation as far as the specifics, but we felt like our time here today would be served better by helping you understand how to choose the topics that need to be discussed. And one of the tools that we have available to our members, we have lots and lots of resources. This particular form is the new employee safety orientation checklist. And this is one of the sample forms that go along with the accident prevention plan, that 7-component plan that we mentioned earlier. We have several sample forms, and this being one of them. This is an Excel format. It's an Excel document. You can easily change each one of these items in this form to create your very own and specific employee safety orientation checklist. This can be for the entity level and even revised further for the department.
And this is available with this WebEx webinar package. It's downloadable. This form is there, but if you have any issues or questions with being able to get that, please contact us and we'll be able to get that to you in another way.
Be very happy to.
And you referred to this earlier, Brandon, but more in depth about reporting incidents and hazards.
A lack of reporting can be very detrimental to the organization. I have visited with one member in the past that they didn't realize that they had an injury with one of their employees until the bill showed up from the hospital. So that is not what we want to have occur. There needs to be a very specific, very detailed reporting process, and that is certainly one of the items that should be on everybody's new employee safety orientation checklist. Employees need to understand who to report to, how to report it, and really what that does for them, because by state law, if the employee does not report that within a given time frame, it can create a lot of problems for the employee and for the member themselves.
And this helps out our claims department to be able to properly investigate and maintain any deadlines that they need to take care of with investigating and filing those claims. We also, in another webinar discussed incident investigation. Even near misses can be helpful in going back and evaluating your safety program and seeing what else is on there. So we
Yes.
talk about accidents and injuries, but even the near misses, especially if an employee is thinks something has happened and they want to report that, that's an important way to improve and going back and contributing to that safety culture.
That's exactly right. A near miss can be an indication of what could happen in the future. It could be an indication of what could be coming in the future. So you certainly want to look at any injuries, property damages, near misses, and hopefully no one will ever have to deal with a fatality, but it can be used in that instance as well.
And then also any incidences or things involving citizens. There's a process for that too. It may not be that a new employee has that, but it's possible that they do. They interact with a citizen, and if something happens, going through that proper procedure of not admitting fault, but providing them with the information. If someone does have a question or concern, how that needs to be reported, and then following through with the city's risk management or other process for filing claims.
That's very important, that employees understand that it can really put the member in a bind if they go out and admit any kind of fault. Say, we're going to fix this for you. This is our fault. We'll take care of it. We certainly discourage people from saying that. The right approach is to say that I can help you file a claim and get the information to TML.
Right. Another issue with the thought process for selecting topics, Brandon, the evaluating common job tasks and conducting a job safety analysis.
A job safety analysis is a tool that we have available to you, much like the new employee safety orientation checklist. And the next slide has a sample of it right here. This is available to our members through our publication page, and it's also one of the downloads that's available with this webinar. You'll notice that there are 3 columns, and the idea is that you choose a task that an employee may need to do, and for example, changing out chlorine containers at a water or wastewater treatment plant, removing a ladder from a fire truck, clearing a weapon at the range. Any number of tasks that employees do daily, you may want to do a job safety analysis for. Again, the 3 columns, you want to observe the employee doing that task as they normally would. Use the far left column to write down each step of that task. And then the second column, you're going to write down the hazards for each step in that task. In the third column, you're going to use to develop new, safer ways of getting that job done. You're going to develop a new process. And this has a benefit that is twofold. One, it's going to create the new process that's a safer way to get the job done and be less likely for people to get hurt or cause damages. The second thing that it's going to do is it's going to help you understand how to train new employees whenever they come on board. We have a second page to this. Now you'll notice down at the bottom that you say you have page blank of blank. You can actually have multiple pages on this, as many as are needed to get the JSA done and complete.
And Brandon, we wanted to talk from our perspective at TML Risk Pool, some of the exposures that we see along different lines of coverages and how those might play a part in a new employee orientation.
Yes. Yeah, the first one being workers' compensation. Claims in slip, trips, and falls, lifting, auto collisions, seasonal and entering, exiting vehicles, those do occur. And collisions are really kind of interesting because they can hit you in so many different areas. They can hit you in workers' compensation. They can hit you in your auto coverages. They can also hit you in property, depending on what the employee hits. So you really should spend quite a bit of time educating employees what is a safe way to operate vehicles, especially if they're operating specific types of vehicles, be it a vehicle that is on the road or some kind of mobile equipment like a backhoe or a trackhoe or something like that. Seasonal concerns, for example, poison ivy. It's a very common claim that we get with our membership, and you want to educate employees what poison ivy looks like in the spring versus in the fall because it changes with the seasons. Seasonal concerns could also be the weather itself, how to prepare and work in the heat versus working in the cold. Entering, exiting vehicles, as silly as it sounds, there are many claims and many injuries with employees simply getting on and off of vehicles, getting in and out of a car or a truck. The primary concern there, or the primary prevention method, is to use 3 points of contact: 2 feet in the hand or 2 hands and 1 foot.
Right, and some of the issues involved with new employee orientation is also supervisors observing those new employees as they conduct some of these tasks.
Yes.
So that goes in part of providing that feedback to the employee.
And really that is a continuation of the new employee orientation process. Not only are you sitting down with them in the office, you want to observe them doing the job and continue to coach them until they do it safely.
Just wanted to go over some of the issues related to general liability. Some of the common issues involve falling and flying objects, mowers, and kick out rocks. They can cause damage to vehicles or to people. And taking a look at that, slip, trips, and falls on city property. Another issue that comes out. Employees should, if they notice something that's not right, they need to mark the area or take care of it so that people don't trip and fall. Property damage. This can come into play with, say, sewage backups. Some of those can be an issue that cities have to deal with in responding to those. And again, going back to that point we made earlier, is this the city's fault or not? That's not for the employee to determine.
Yes.
And then striking underground objects, how we see a lot of those occur is line strikes, people excavating and digging. Just wanted to bring up one of those resources that we talk about, and you worked with, Brandon, was a excavation documentation guide. And this guide is helpful to a pre-inspection of the area, as well as any kind of documentation that needs to be done in case of a line strike, but goes through that process for that. Very useful. It is available on our website. And the striking overhead objects, mobile equipment, things like that, can strike objects and cause damage.
Yes, we have a lot of employees that are very observant on the road. They're watching the traffic, they're watching their mirrors, and especially the vehicles that are a little bit taller, say a solid waste vehicle, they may not be looking up above, and that gets a lot of people. And going back to the falling and flying objects on the general liability claims, those could be unsecured loads too. As employees are driving around, there may be a rake or a shovel or a sledgehammer that falls out of the back of the pickup or off a trailer. Make sure that those loads are secured as well. Public officials, errors and omissions coverages, discrimination, going back to some of the HR, human resources related topics. Termination, wrongful termination, spending time with supervisors, just like the City of Waco brings the supervisors back for additional training. We're going to try to coach you through how to do your job. We want to set people up for success. So, harassment, whistleblower, retaliation, these are all E&O type claims.
And ethics might go along with this as well. Some cities will actually have an ethics program, let them know what's right and what's wrong. And they can understand, okay, these are the rules that employees have to follow, instead of coming back later saying, oh yeah, well, employee, you did something wrong, well, here's the rule.
Yes.
And sometimes that thinking and all that can help with preventing crime or inadvertent use of a credit card or anything like that the employee might be trusted with.
Yes.
Law enforcement liability. Of course, there's a lot of attention on this just because it's a high-risk exposure. But, police departments should have a well-documented and implemented training program in order to avoid issues involving wrongful arrests, excessive use of force, illegal search and seizure. Something that does not happen very often, thankfully, but is a high risk is if a city has a holding facility or a jail, and going through the process of checklists and monitoring the detainees and people in that facility, inspections, maybe making modifications to be sure that people don't have access to something that they may use to commit suicide.
Yes. And I'd like to add a little bit to that, and I'm going to use law enforcement liability as a specific example, but this statement really applies to this whole topic in general. You don't have to get really creative with what to train on. With our police departments, hopefully they have a good set of policies and procedures, and we have resources that can help police departments develop those if need be. But refer to those policies and procedures and make that a part of your new employee orientation. Some of this stuff that we're trying to encourage you to do today may already be in existence. It's just somewhat formalizing it whenever new employees come on board.
And back to the auto issue.
Yeah, auto backing, striking fixed objects, striking overhead objects, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, larger trucks, that may hit overhead lines. Distracted, aggressive, and impaired driving. I heard a new term the other day that really stuck with me, and it came from one of our members, and I'll go ahead and tell on him. It was the City of Waco Police Department. I really liked what he said. He used a term called divided attention. They have so many things that their patrol officers have to pay attention to that their attention gets divided. They have to watch the traffic. They have to possibly pay attention to somebody that's in the back seat. They have to look for anything that they may have to react to. There's so many things that they have to devote their attention to that sometimes the traffic itself gets put on the back burner. We train how to do that. We hopefully train how to use that attention wisely. Seatbelt usage. Going back to backing, there are some very simple and specific procedures that can be incorporated that virtually eliminates the likelihood of a backing incident. Backing incidents happen frequently, and again, with the use of spotters, with pulling through parking spots so that you don't have to back out. In the event that you do have to back into a parking spot or back into it instead of backing out of it, you're able to back in more safely than you are backing out. Only use that if you have to back. There are some things that we can assist our membership with to put those processes in place.
And just reviewing some of the issues related to property, fire prevention, and training employees on how to use fire extinguishers. They might be the ones that are there and they need to know how to use that fire extinguisher. And securing property, when it comes to theft and vandalism, mobile equipment can be a target for vandals.
Absolutely. I had one member probably 3 or 4 years ago, went out and talked to them after they had some equipment stolen off of a truck, and one of the trucks stolen as well, and come to find out they actually left the keys in the trucks overnight. So all the vandal had to do was to jump the fence, start the truck, and motor on. In this particular instance, the reason that they left the key in there is so that the employee, if they got called in at night, would not have to go inside, get the key out of the office, and then go back to the truck. Their thought process was to speed the process along and not delay the call, but you're talking 3 or 4 minutes versus several $1,000s worth of loss.
And another property exposure is water damage. Even just a simple water leak or something that's left running over the weekend can cause a lot of water damage when you come back on that Monday morning.
Yeah, that's exactly right, yes.
And also a lot of downtime and have to clean up. So just want to let people know some of the resources that we have available for our members. Some of the things that we talked about, say somebody's gone through and identified, okay, we have ladders. That's something the employees have to do. We need to do training on that. But we have specific resources related to ladder safety, for example, in our media library. It's a DVD library. People can check out a video and use that for implementing in a safety and training program. Online learning center. These are individualized classes for employees to take. They have tests, and then the employee can get a certificate so that you can ensure that the employee has some basic knowledge about some of these subject matters, whether it's excavation and excavation, or trenching, confined space safety, just numerous things. Even some of the fire extinguishers, and lots of different opportunities for members to explore with their employees to get some of this basic information. And
yes, I love the online learning center. I really encourage our membership to use that whenever I go out and visit face-to-face with them. It is an excellent resource for new employee orientation. It documents who has taken what, and everybody gets the same training, and it's easily and readily available as long as you have a computer with internet access.
Right, and it is free to our members to use.
Yes.
Another option for employees to learn from is a webinar such as this one. We have other topics that are recorded and available for people to go back and listen to, watch, and learn from that. And we also have publications. We referred to some of the things like the Excavation Documentation Guide, the Accident Prevention Plan, full safety plan, and many others, articles and things like that to help people understand, okay, these are some exposures and how do I address this? This is a listing of our staff here by area. It's also available on our website, TMLIRP.org/loss-prevention. Please, if you have any questions or comments related to any of these things that we talked about, be sure to let your representative know. Now, we wanted to go back. We started with a question. We asked people, okay, how much time do you formally spend about educating employees about expectations and safe work practices? Now go back and ask yourselves, is that answer the same? Would you want to keep that answer the same, knowing what we've talked about today?
Hopefully we've piqued some interest in expanding the process that you have in place, and I hope that this question really kind of spurs that interest.
And I think the only wrong answer here might be none. I think we're in agreement on that. But again, there's a lot of things that we talked about. Not everybody can do every single thing, but what are you incrementally doing to get better? Yeah,
if you're not doing anything at this point right now, just start somewhere. Just pick a few topics, train your employees. It can build in the future. You don't have to create this grand program right off the bat. You're not going to be able to do that. Start small, build on that process. Let it evolve through time, and you're going to have a very successful new employee orientation process within a very short amount of time.
Well, thank you for that, Brandon. Is there anything else?
No, I really appreciate your time. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact your loss prevention rep. We are here to help you in every way possible.
All right. Well, thank you, and we thank you, the audience, for participating and watching this webinar. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you, and have a safe day.